Here is something most men will never hear directly from a woman's lips. When a woman feels genuine attraction and wants to become closer to you, she may not always announce it clearly. Instead, interest can appear through a collection of small behaviors: how long she keeps a conversation going, how much of herself she reveals, how often she creates opportunities to see you, and how comfortable she becomes in your presence. And this is where things get complicated. A smile can mean friendliness. Eye contact can mean confidence. A touch can mean nothing more than being naturally affectionate. So, if you're looking for one magical signal that proves a woman wants intimacy, you're likely to misunderstand her. The real story is usually found in the pattern. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. You met a woman who seemed unusually interested in you, but you couldn't tell whether she was simply being kind. You noticed the long conversations, the little jokes, the way she seemed to appear wherever you were, but you kept asking yourself, am I imagining this? And perhaps you've also experienced the opposite, thinking someone was attracted to you when she was simply being warm and friendly. That uncertainty can be frustrating. So tell me in the comments, have you ever looked back on an interaction months later and realized, wait, maybe she was actually interested in me? Your experience might be exactly what another viewer needs to hear. The important thing is that attraction isn't a mind-reading game. It's not about decoding women as if they're puzzles or assuming that every gesture secretly means, I want you. Healthy attraction involves two people gradually discovering whether the interest is mutual. So today, we're going to look at 6 behaviors that can sometimes reveal growing attraction or emotional interest, while also learning how to distinguish genuine interest from ordinary friendliness. And the final one is especially interesting because it has less to do with what she says and more to do with how the entire interaction feels. Mary Smith, host of Senior Mindful Living YouTube channel. Let's start with something many people underestimate: touch. When a woman is comfortable and attracted to someone, she may begin allowing more natural physical contact into the interaction. Maybe she briefly touches your arm while laughing. Maybe she adjusts something on your clothing. Maybe she sits a little closer than necessary. Maybe she doesn't immediately move away when your shoulders or hands happen to come into contact. But there's an important distinction here. Touch by itself is not proof of attraction. Some people are naturally tactile. Some cultures encourage more physical contact. Some women are simply comfortable around friends. What matters is context and consistency. Imagine you're having coffee with a woman you've known for a few weeks. During the conversation, she laughs, briefly touches your forearm, then later sits slightly closer when you're talking. The next time you meet, she again seems comfortable being physically close. That's more informative than one isolated touch because you're seeing a pattern of increasing comfort. And here's the practical lesson. Don't treat physical contact as permission to escalate. Treat it as information about comfort. If she touches your arm, you don't need to immediately grab her hand. You can simply remain relaxed, maintain comfortable eye contact, and continue the conversation. If she moves closer, you can allow the space to remain comfortable. If she pulls away, respect the distance immediately. Real confidence isn't forcing closeness, it's being comfortable enough to let closeness develop naturally. Research on human courtship has documented numerous nonverbal behaviors associated with courtship and attraction. Monica Moore's observational research famously cataloged 52 different behaviors displayed by women in contexts where courtship was relevant. But the existence of many possible signals is precisely why no single gesture should be treated as a guaranteed declaration of attraction. And that brings us to the second sign, which may actually be more meaningful than touch. She starts giving you access to her inner world. Think about the difference between information and vulnerability. A woman can tell you what she does for work. She can tell you where she went last weekend. She can tell you her favorite movie. That's information. But when she begins telling you about something that genuinely matters to her, an insecurity, a difficult experience, a family conflict, a dream she's afraid to pursue, or something she rarely discusses that's different, it doesn't automatically mean romantic attraction, but it can indicate growing trust and emotional closeness. Psychologists have long studied the role of self-disclosure in developing interpersonal closeness. In one well-known experiment, Arthur Aaron and colleagues used a structured series of increasingly personal questions to explore how closeness can develop between strangers. The study demonstrated that reciprocal self-disclosure can contribute to a feeling of interpersonal closeness. Think about what happens when someone tells you something deeply personal. They're taking a small emotional risk. They're essentially asking, "What are you going to do with this part of me?" And your response matters. If she tells you about something painful from her past, and you immediately turn it into a joke, start giving unsolicited advice, or make the conversation about yourself, she may learn that emotional openness isn't safe with you. Instead, try something simple. Listen. Ask a thoughtful follow-up question. Don't rush to fix everything. You might say, "That sounds like it was really difficult. How did that experience affect you?" That's it. You don't have to become her therapist. You don't have to solve her life. You're simply showing that you can handle emotional information without becoming uncomfortable. And sometimes, that emotional safety is far more powerful than trying to impress someone. Now here's where things become even more interesting. A woman who is becoming genuinely interested in you may begin creating more opportunities for the two of you to interact. Maybe she asks you to grab coffee after an event. Maybe she remembers something you mentioned and follows up on it days later. Maybe she sends you a message about something that reminded her of you. Maybe she finds reasons to continue conversations that could easily have ended 10 minutes earlier. The key word here is investment. People make time for things that matter to them. That doesn't mean someone who is busy and doesn't text constantly isn't interested. People have jobs, families, responsibilities, personalities, and different communication styles. But over time, reciprocal effort becomes difficult to ignore. If you're always initiating, always planning, always asking questions, and always keeping the conversation alive, that's useful information. On the other hand, if she occasionally initiates, remembers details, suggests future activities, and consistently participates in keeping the connection alive, you're seeing something much more meaningful. Research on friendship development supports the broader idea that time spent together is associated with increasing closeness. Jeffrey Hall's research found relationships tend to become closer as people invest more time together, although the exact amount varies considerably and shouldn't be treated as a dating formula. So don't count hours, watch investment. A woman doesn't have to spend every free minute with you, but if she consistently makes some room for you, that's worth noticing. And there's another subtle behavior that often appears alongside this. She begins remembering the little things. You casually mention that you have an important appointment on Thursday. A few days later, she asks, "How did that appointment go?" You tell her your favorite kind of food. Weeks later, she says, "I remember you said you like Thai food. Have you tried that new place?" That may sound small. It's not. Attention is one of the clearest forms of interpersonal investment. When someone is genuinely interested in getting to know you, your words don't simply disappear when the conversation ends. Some of them stay. And this leads naturally to the fourth sign, conversational reciprocity. Have you ever talked to someone where you felt like you were carrying the entire conversation? You ask the questions, you tell the stories, you send the messages, you keep introducing new topics. Eventually you start wondering, does she actually want to talk to me? Now compare that with a woman who seems to continually find another question to ask. You say something, and instead of simply replying, she expands on it. You tell a story, and she shares one of her own. You make a joke, and she builds on it. The conversation doesn't feel like an interview. It feels like two people creating something together. That's important, because attraction isn't only about attention, it's about reciprocity. And one of the simplest exercises you can use is this. Next time you have a conversation with someone you're interested in, stop trying to perform. Don't constantly think about your next clever line. Instead, listen for reciprocity. Does she ask questions about you? Does she volunteer information without being prompted? Does she bring up subjects from previous conversations? Does she seem reluctant to end conversations that could naturally continue? These patterns can tell you much more than obsessing over whether she looked at your lips for 2 seconds. And speaking of patterns, here's the fifth sign. She begins mirroring your energy. You may notice that she starts using some of your expressions. She adopts a similar conversational rhythm. When you lean forward during an engaging conversation, she may do something similar. When you're relaxed, she may become more relaxed. This phenomenon is often discussed as behavioral mirroring or interpersonal synchrony. But again, be careful. Mirroring is not a secret biological confession of love. People mirror one another for many reasons, including rapport, attention, social learning, and ordinary conversational coordination. So don't sit across from someone thinking, she crossed her legs after I crossed mine, therefore she wants me. That's not psychology. That's wishful thinking. Instead, look at the larger interaction. Does the conversation feel synchronized? Do you naturally match each other's pace? Do pauses feel comfortable instead of awkward? Do you laugh at similar moments? Does she seem increasingly relaxed around you? Those things can indicate rapport. And rapport matters because attraction tends to become easier when two people feel psychologically safe around one another. Now let's get to the sixth sign. She starts placing you in future experiences. This can be incredibly subtle. Maybe she says, you would love this restaurant. Maybe she says, we should try that sometime. Maybe she tells you about an event happening next month and asks whether you've ever been. Maybe she mentions a movie coming out and says, I think you'd like that. Notice what's happening. She's not necessarily declaring romantic intentions. She's creating possibilities. She's allowing you to imagine another interaction. And that's powerful, because attraction isn't only about how someone feels in the present. It's also about whether they can imagine wanting more experiences with you. There's a fascinating psychological reason this matters. Relationships become closer through repeated interaction, shared activities, everyday conversation, and time together. Hall's research found that time spent together was associated with changes in relationship closeness. So when someone repeatedly creates opportunities for future interaction, the important signal isn't the specific sentence, it's the investment behind it. But here's the part I really want you to remember. You should never use these signs as a substitute for communication. Not touch, not eye contact, not mirroring, not texting, not body language, none of them gives you certainty about what another person wants. The strongest evidence of romantic interest is still consistent behavior combined with clear communication. And if you're wondering what to do when you notice several of these behaviors, the answer isn't to suddenly become aggressive or overly confident. Slow down, match her level of investment, ask her questions, create opportunities for genuine conversation, suggest something simple, like coffee or dinner, and then pay attention to whether she reciprocates. For example, imagine you've been talking with a woman for several weeks. She regularly initiates conversations, remembers details about your life, shares personal stories, laughs easily around you, and has mentioned wanting to try a restaurant with you. You don't need to decode another 20 signals. You can simply say, you've mentioned that restaurant a few times. Would you like to go together this weekend? That's confident. It's direct without being pushy. And most importantly, it gives her the freedom to answer honestly. If she says yes, wonderful. If she says no, respect it. If she's uncertain, give her space. If she consistently avoids making plans, don't keep searching for hidden signs that contradict her behavior. This is where emotional maturity separates healthy attraction from obsession. Healthy attraction can tolerate uncertainty. It can hear no. It can respect boundaries. And it doesn't require turning another person's behavior into a puzzle that must be solved. So let's bring everything together. A woman who may be developing attraction could become more physically comfortable with you. She may share more personal parts of herself. She may invest more time and attention. She may become more reciprocal in conversation. You may notice greater behavioral synchrony, and she may begin creating possibilities for future experiences together. But remember the most important word in this entire video: pattern. One signal means very little. Several consistent behaviors, combined with reciprocal effort and clear communication, tell you much more. And there's one final exercise I'd like you to try. The next time you think a woman might be interested in you, don't immediately ask yourself, what does this signal mean? Ask 3 better questions. Is she consistently investing in the connection? Does she seem comfortable and engaged when we're together? And am I giving her enough space to show me what she actually wants? Those 3 questions will save you from a tremendous amount of confusion. Because sometimes attraction isn't hidden. Sometimes we're simply looking for one dramatic sign when the real answer is sitting quietly inside a pattern of small choices. And perhaps that's the most beautiful part of human connection. It's rarely one spectacular moment. It's the accumulation of little moments. She remembers, she listens, she stays a little longer, she asks another question. She shares something personal. She makes another plan. And slowly, without either person forcing it, two people begin moving from strangers towards something much closer. So if you've ever missed an opportunity because you weren't sure whether someone was interested, don't beat yourself up. You don't need to become an expert at reading minds. You simply need to become better at noticing reciprocity, respecting boundaries, communicating clearly, and allowing another person the freedom to meet you halfway. If this video gave you a new perspective on attraction and emotional connection, share it with someone who might find it useful. And if you've ever experienced a situation where you realized much later that someone had been showing interest, tell us your story in the comments. You never know who might recognize themselves in it. And if you enjoy thoughtful conversations about attraction, relationships, emotional intelligence, and the psychology behind human connection, subscribe to Senior Mindful Living and turn on the notification bell. Because sometimes understanding attraction isn't about learning how to control someone else's feelings. It's about becoming perceptive enough to recognize genuine connection and emotionally mature enough to respond to it with respect.